If you're a new or existing trainee, or maybe you're just curious, in this video I'm going to share my top 15 lessons to help you make the best start to your legal career. These are all things that I had to figure out on the job myself, and if I knew them from before starting, it would have saved me a lot of pain. So hopefully they'll be useful for you too, and there'll be some stuff in here that you wouldn't have heard before. If you're new here, my name's Aydin. I'm a corporate lawyer in London and a New York qualified attorney. I make videos about the law application process, my experience as a lawyer, and that sort of thing. So if you're interested in that, please consider subscribing. I also run a newsletter which is aimed at aspiring lawyers. It's called Little Law, and if you want to, you can check that out. The link will be in the description below. All right, let's jump in. My first tip is to carry a notepad with you wherever you go. You might have heard me say this in other videos as well, because I think it's really important. Whenever I'm walking around the office, I always carry a notepad with me exactly like this. Sometimes when you're just walking around, someone will just see you, remember that you can help them with something, and call you over and start telling you something that you should be doing. And it's in those sorts of times that having a notepad will be super useful, because you just won't be able to remember everything they said, and it just puts you in a bad situation when you get back to your desk and you realize you've forgotten half the things that they've said. Tip number 2 is to always clarify instructions. You want to make sure that when someone's asking you to help them, you have all the tools you need to be able to do that job to the best of your ability. You might want to ask what form they want the final product from you. If it's a research note, they might want a formal memo which has a very rigid layout, or they might just want you to research and put the answer in a couple lines in an email. You might ask how long they expect you to spend on that task. Again, if it's a really random research task, they might just want you to spend a couple hours to see if there is an easy answer out there, and if not, they might want you to stop. Sometimes there's no answer, and if you spend days and days, you'll get frustrated, you'll rack up a lot of costs, and your supervisor will also not be so happy either. So it's good to ask these things up front. If they want you to prepare a document, you might ask if there's one that they've used before. So maybe they could send you that so you get a sense of what it's meant to look like. Or maybe they could flag to you if there's a precedent or template document that exists on your firm's system already. Make sure to ask for deadlines so you save yourself any unnecessary late nights. And if it's a client matter, make sure you ask for the matter number so you can record your time correctly. Now, to add on that, even after you've asked all those questions and when you leave thinking that you know exactly what you've been asked to do, you'll probably find that once you start doing the task, there'll be new questions that pop up and you'll be a bit confused about other things. And my one tip when you get into this situation is to batch your questions. Keep pushing through the task, try and complete it to the best of your ability without the answers to those questions. Keep a list of your questions separately and just try and get through to the end. If you're drafting a document, you can use placeholders and just square brackets and just a blob or something to mark areas where you're missing information that you need, but try and still get through to the end of the task as best as you can. And then once you're done, or as done as you can be, put in some time with your supervisor, either chat to them or over email, whatever seems right, and deal with all your questions in one go. My third tip is to reread your instructions that you wrote for yourself or that you were given in an email right before you submit any work. This is pretty simple. Basically, once you've finished a piece of work, just before you press send on the email to send it to your supervisor, reread the instructions once again from that initial time when you had that conversation and they told you what to do. This is a little step that saved me a bunch of times, because sometimes when you're in the thick of it doing a research task or drafting a document or whatever, you can go a bit off track. Maybe your research is a bit too deep, more than what you've been asked to do, and it's a nice way of just making sure that the thing you're submitting is actually what you've been asked to do. Tip number 4 is to become an expert in your firm's DMS, or document management system. A document management system, or DMS, is basically where all your law firm's documents live. All the precedents and templates, and also all the client documents going back years and years and years. And getting familiar with the DMS will help you in 2 major ways. First way is that you can just become an organizational boss, and you'll know how to navigate around folders and rename files and that sort of thing in the DMS, which is slightly different to what you'll be used to with your own laptops. And the benefit of that is, as a trainee, if you're able to keep the DMS super organized or the files super organized for a particular client matter, people are going to want to work with you just for that reason alone. And the second and bigger reason you want to become a document management system expert is that the DMS is a treasure trove of information. If you think about it, that's what law firms are being paid to do. Create documents, and it's all there. All the documents your firm's ever worked on are there at your fingertips, and you can look at them. Searching in the DMS has helped me loads, because when I'm asked to do something that I've not done before and there isn't a precedent or template document, I can have a look at the DMS and get a bit of an understanding of how previous people have done similar types of documents. One kind of warning to keep in mind when looking through the DMS is that A lot of the times the client documents have been negotiated, so do look at them for inspiration and kind of getting a sense of ideas that you might be able to use, but don't think that you can just take a document from the DMS and use it, because sometimes it looks like it's going to give you the answer, but there are other bits of the document that don't do what you want them to do, and they won't work for you, and you'll end up in a worse position. Tip number 5 is to learn how to help yourself when you're stuck on a task. You're going to get stuck on things all the time, and there are ways that you can kind of try and get yourself unstuck. One we've already discussed, which is looking at the precedent documents, which are like the template documents, or other documents on your firm's document management system for similar things that have happened in the past that can kind of help you figure out what you're meant to be doing. Another way to unstick yourself is to speak to other trainees and see if they've done the task that you've been asked to before, or if they understand it better than you. And then concepts you don't understand that might come up, you can use the resources at your firm. Maybe you have access to Thomson Reuters Practical Law or Lexis PSL, that can give you guides and things that will help you kind of understand what the words mean and what the concepts mean and how these things work. My 6th tip is to run red lines on your own work to give yourself feedback. Getting feedback as a trainee is the best way to learn, so ask for feedback and don't be defensive when you're getting it, because that's kind of what you're there to do. Now, a lot of the time people are busy and they won't be able to give you instant feedback when you want it. So one trick you can do is to run a red line or a comparison or a black line, whatever you call it at your firm, against the version of a document you sent to your supervisor versus the version that they have sent out to the client if you're copied on that email. You can just take your version, put it as the original, take their version, put it as the amended, run it in the software that you have at your firm. You'll probably have some software that's able to do this, and then immediately see the changes that they've made. Just seeing what it is that they've changed, immediately you'll learn a lot from that, because you'll see where you went wrong or where they've tightened things up or whatever. Tip number 7 is to create your own document bank. You're going to have a precedent or template bank at your firm, but a lot of the time you'll draft some documents that you think work well for you, or you think are well organized or have particular wording that you like to use. And in those cases, it's quite useful to just save them down and have your own kind of private precedent bank for yourself. This could be letters, emails, documents, all sorts. Like for example, I had a template written resolution, a template board minute, some filings that I did a lot in corporate. I had templates of those, emails for handovers, emails for signing instructions. I had like just folders where I saved these things down for myself, and because you use them again and again and again, you just copy paste it, kind of amend the names of the client or amend the company numbers or whatever, and you've already started and done the bulk of the work before. Tip number 8 is to actively manage your workload. Managing your workload as a trainee is going to be hard, and I definitely get the temptation that you want to say yes all the time because you want to impress, but I'm going to tell you that's a bad idea. If you keep doing that, you're going to overcommit to work, and that means you're either going to end up rushing it and doing kind of a crap job, or you're just going to be late in handing stuff in, which is also not a good look. So when you're offered new work and you think you're already kind of at maximum capacity and too busy to take it on, don't always say yes. But I get it, it's not a good look to say no either. You want to be looking like a team player, and you don't look like you're like avoiding work and not helping out. So this is what you can do instead. Instead of saying no, tell the person what you're working on and who it's for. Then they'll see that you've got other stuff on, and you can offer to them, once you get this stuff done, you'll then be happy to work on the thing that they're asking you to work on now. So you could say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't take that on. Helen's asked me to draft these board minutes. I think it'll take me until the end of the day to do that, but if your task can wait, I'll be more than happy to start on it tomorrow. Now, sometimes the work you're being offered is going to be super urgent and needs to be done right now. In that case, you can offer to reprioritize the work that you're doing now to kind of put that new work to the front of the queue and do that first, if the person that you're working for now is happy to do that. Sometimes you'll find that the work you're doing already now, despite the fact that your supervisor's told you it's urgent, when a more urgent piece of work comes in, the deadline on that can soften, and turns out it's not as urgent as it initially seemed to be, which means you can kind of prioritize the other work first and kind of shift things around a bit. Finally, if you still can't do the work or the tasks can't be reprioritized, so you're going to actually have to say no to this person, sometimes it's a good touch to offer to help find another trainee to fill in the gap. A lot of the time a supervisor won't want you to do that, but it's nice to offer, and sometimes as a trainee you'll have a better sense of who might be quiet because maybe it came up over lunch that someone sat with nothing to do. Tip number 9 is to work with the support staff that you have at your firm. As soon as you join a new firm or join a new team after a seat change, try and get to know the support staff who are working in that team. By support staff, I mean anyone who isn't a lawyer or a fee earner. I don't really like that word, but basically anyone who isn't a fee earning lawyer. This could be anyone from secretaries to professional support lawyers to company secretary experts to document formatting teams or whatever. They'll all play a different role, so find out who they are, go say hi, and find out what it is that they do and how they could help you. It's beneficial for a couple of reasons. One, it's good to always have new friends at a firm or in a new team when you've moved. And two, they'll know a hell of a lot more than you'll know as a trainee, and they can help you out massively. So go introduce yourself to everyone in the team. Don't just speak to the lawyers, speak to everyone. It's nice to be nice, and also it'd be a massive help to you in your time there. Tip number 10 is to demonstrate curiosity. I think this is a super important one to make a good impression as a trainee. This is because at this early stage in your legal career, you're not going to have a lot of technical legal knowledge that will be super valuable in your team. You're not going to always know what's going on. That's inevitable. And in that situation, you kind of have two options. One, get given a task, do the task, hand it back. You might be able to do that without knowing what's going on in some cases. Or two, get given a task, have a think about it, do the task of course, but have a think about how it fits into the bigger picture, or just generally why it is you're doing the task. And then when you hand it in, maybe come with a few questions and help build your understanding of what it is you're actually doing. This way you'll learn so much faster. And the things you can ask are things like, what's the purpose of this document and why do we need it in this transaction? What are we trying to achieve with this memo and how does it fit into the client's plans? Or maybe at the beginning when you've been given the task, you can ask, are there any other documents I should look at for context? Maybe there's been a report that's already been prepared. You can read that and just understand how what you've been asked to do fits into the wider picture of the bigger task for the client. As I said, as a trainee, you're not going to have a lot of technical skills. Just by trying to push and push with your curiosity and really understand what it is that you're doing and how it fits into the bigger picture, you'll learn a lot super fast. Tip number 11 is to be okay making mistakes. You're not the only person that it happens to. Now, when you realize you've made a mistake on a document that's already gone to your supervisor or might have already gone out to the client, this is what you should do. First, spend a couple minutes thinking how this can be resolved. Then, this is the scary bit. You should go to your supervisor, tell them what the mistake is that you think you've made and what you believe that the solution for that is. At that point, they'll hopefully be satisfied with your kind of resolution or have a better way to solve it themselves. And if you can help out with solving the problem, do try and do that. Sometimes they'll just be able to do it themselves and they won't need your help, but if you can help out, it can just make yourself feel a little bit better. Then the important part, think about what processes you can put in place to stop that kind of mistake happening again. So for example, you can keep a list of things that you want to check on every document before you send it out from now on. And this mistake you now made, you could add it to that list and basically make sure that it doesn't happen again, because from now on when you're sending documents out, you're checking them against this list before they get sent across. Tip number 12 is to use your calendar a lot, more than you think you need to. Don't rely on your brain to remember things. Like I use my calendars to keep track of events, to keep track of deadlines on certain deals, to keep track of holidays and update my holidays, or even to block out certain hours of the day when I want to be focusing on a particular task. Also, keeping track of deadlines on your calendar is cool because sometimes if there's a deadline in 2 months' time, you just stick it in your calendar. And when it gets to that time, you message everyone in that deal team or whoever you're working with who needs to know about that deadline. Say, hey, that deadline is coming up in a week and it looks super impressive, but you've not really had to do anything. You just had to remember for like 2 seconds to put it in your calendar, and then your calendar just pops up and says, hey, that deadline's coming up. So it's a super easy way to look really organized and really clever, but it's actually not that hard. Tip number 13, and this is another one that I've had to learn the hard way. Take meeting notes all the time. If you're ever in a meeting, either real life or virtual, make sure you have your laptop and take a note, as detailed note as you can. And by that I mean pretty much try and write down everything you can write down that's being said in this meeting. Usually you will be told before if you need to take a note of a meeting, and it's a pretty typical trainee task to be asked to do that. So if you're asked to take a note, take a full note, include as much as you can. If you're asked to take a brief note and only summarize the action points or the main topics that were discussed, don't listen to them. Just still take as full a note as you can and then do the summarizing afterwards. If you're told not to take a note, I would still take some brief notes just for yourself. Tip number 14 is to keep a diary of what you've worked on during your time at the firm. So keep track of the work you've done, who you did it for, and the feedback you received. You're going to have an appraisal meeting with your supervisor a few months into the seat to discuss your progress and stuff like that. So if you've done this, when it comes to your appraisal, you'll remember what you did for one, and two, make your supervisor's job way easier, because when they're looking for feedback, you can just say, hey, this is what I've done. These are the people I've worked with. Feel free to reach out to them for feedback. And that brings us to the final tip, tip number 15. And tip number 15 is to accept that the training contract will be uncomfortable at times. I mean, you're going to be new to it all, learning bit by bit over 6 months. And the second you feel comfortable and feel like you've got the hang of it, you're going to be starting another rotation and being in a new environment that requires new skills and new people and a new style of working, and you're going to be uncomfortable all over again. After 2 or 3 months in a seat, you're going to pick up a lot of skills and knowledge, and you're just going to feel a lot more comfortable there. But across the 2 years as a whole, you're not going to feel confident all the time, and that can be quite difficult to deal with. But trust me, you're going to learn so much and gain so much experience, knowledge, and skills from pretty much living outside your comfort zone for 2 years. So that brings me to the end of my top 15 tips that trainees should know and can use to give them the best start in their legal career. It's a start of a new chapter for you, which is amazing, and it's exciting, of course, but it's also a steep learning curve, and you're going to struggle at times, which is completely normal. So don't be too hard on yourself in those moments. And remember what an amazing achievement it is that you've made it to this stage. These 15 tips are based on my experience. They're things that I think are important, of course, but I wanted to share them because it's better for you to learn from my mistakes and learn from your own. It's less painful for you and you can just get there quicker. If you have any tips I haven't covered and you think are really good, drop them as a comment below, and maybe we can make like a list of tips, which could be a cool resource for people who are watching this video and want more tips to succeed in their training contract. As always, let me know your thoughts on this video by leaving a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a comment down below. And if you like this sort of content, do consider subscribing, because I'm going to be putting out more videos like this. For all you aspiring lawyers, I run a commercial awareness newsletter called Little Law, which you can sign up for if you want. The link will be in the description below. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful, and I'll catch you next time.